Hello, and welcome to today's live chapter reading of Hold Me Forever by Leah Nolan, brought to you by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Lark Donovan had sworn she'd never return to Heron Harbor Island. Yet, here she was, waiting to disembark her RV from the afternoon ferry, ending a flawless 6-year island-free streak. A mixture of apprehension, fear, and foreboding swirled in her stomach. Lark gripped the steering wheel tight, willing the sensation away. This was ridiculous. She spent half of her life traveling across the country alone, sometimes to remote and dangerous places. She could survive a week on a barrier island off the coast of Delaware for cripe's sake. Except, this trip might be more dangerous than any she had taken before. It certainly might be the most painful. A strangled sigh escaped her throat as Lark leaned her head against the high back seat in the RV's cab. It wasn't fair. She should be looking forward to her sister Wren's wedding to Smith Connors. Lark hadn't seen Smith since her last visit to the island, back before he was a celebrity chef with his own restaurants, best-selling cookbooks, and cooking show. But rather than looking forward to a reunion and tasting some of his mouth-watering creations for herself, she was dreading everything about this week, which made her feel horrible. Because as much as Lark wanted to see her family, there was one person she was absolutely dreading seeing, and it was the one encounter she couldn't avoid. Not because he'd lived here all his life, or because he was Heron Harbor's chief of police, but because he was Smith's best man. But Lark didn't want to waste another moment thinking about Hunter McMullen. There'd be plenty of time to deal with him later in the week when she had no choice. If she were clever, she could avoid him until the rehearsal dinner next Friday night. And then, if there were the slightest chance they'd come into contact, she'd improvise something to avoid awkward small talk. Keeping her distance would be harder at the wedding on Saturday, but she was prepared if they had to speak. She'd spent the 8-hour drive from Vermont rehearsing an arsenal of cool, composed, and nonchalant retorts. Everything but an apology. The ferry docked, and cars began their slow descent down the ramp and onto the island. It wasn't always this time-consuming to get to Heron Harbor. Last fall, a massive storm had turned up the East Coast and washed out the bridge connecting the island to the mainland. A replacement bridge was under construction, but from what Lark had seen of the skeletal structure from the ferry, it wouldn't be done anytime soon. Lark coaxed Minnie, her ancient and beloved Minnie Winnie Winnebago RV, through the ferry parking lot and onto Oyster Avenue, the thoroughfare that ran the length of the island. Driving this road felt surreal. She hadn't been here in nearly a decade, yet it could have been yesterday. She recognized every residence, light post, farm stand, and business she passed. The phone in the cradle on the dash rang, and Lark reached to hit the speaker button. One of these days, she'd buy a Bluetooth stereo and answer calls like other 21st century residents. But that'd take disposable income, and she didn't have much of that these days. Keeping Winnie running was becoming an expensive proposition. "Miss Lark! Oh my God! Miss Lark, you there?" The young voice was high and shrill. Lark's heart plummeted to her knees. "Kelsey, is everything okay?" The girl was one of Lark's art students who lived in the community near Vermont's artist colony, where Lark resided half the year. Kelsey had faced more in her 17 years than most people did in a lifetime. She could be calling about her mother overdosing again, or her brother heading back to jail. "It's more than okay. It's amazing." Kelsey sounded as if she was jumping in place. "I got it!" A wave of relief washed over Lark, allowing her to breathe again. Kelsey was safe. Now to figure out what the heck she was talking about. "Got what?" "Kels, you're kind of giving me a heart attack." "The scholarship to RISD. I'm going to art school." She let out a whoop that nearly pierced Lark's eardrum. It was a sacrifice Lark was happy to make. The Rhode Island School of Design was one of the best in the country. Kelsey deserved a spot in their incoming freshman class and the biggest scholarship they could offer. It meant more than getting an education. It gave Kelsey a path out of Briar's Notch and a chance at a successful life. Tears welled in Lark's eyes. "Oh, Kels, I'm so happy for you. You worked so hard for this." "I can't believe it. It feels like a dream." Her voice broke with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you." A mixture of pride and joy knotted in Lark's throat. "Sure you could have. You're one of the most talented people I know." "Stop. We both know how much you taught me." It was true. Lark had spent hours coaching Kelsey, but she'd never dare claim credit for the young woman's brilliance. Lark had given her a nudge, but Kelsey had learned to fly. "I can teach, but I can't make you learn." That was all you. "You gave me free lessons. You didn't have to do that," Kelsey said. Lark had wanted Kelsey to flourish, so she didn't have much choice. It wasn't as if art lessons were a high priority for Kelsey's mom, deadbeat dad, or serial criminal brother. "No, but you earned them. You didn't rest on your raw talent. You put in the effort and showed up every week with new work. You're the kind of students teachers pray for." Lark imagined Kelsey's apple-round cheeks flushing pink. The young woman hated compliments, no doubt to the result of growing up in a dysfunctional, abusive home. "I'll never forget what you did for me, Miss Lark. If it weren't for you, I'd be stuck here forever." That was why Lark had expended so much energy teaching Kelsey, developing her portfolio, and guiding her decision on where to apply for college. Kelsey had too much promise to ignore. "Just give me one of your paintings when you're famous and we'll call it even." Kelsey laughed. "That it? I'll give you one now." "I'll take it," Lark chuckled. "Oh, I know what I'll make. And don't worry, it'll be small enough to fit in Minnie." "Sounds perfect," Lark said. For the last 5 years, Lark had been splitting her time between living and working at the Belcher Art Colony and traveling the country in Minnie, giving workshops and selling her work at festivals. Traveling light wasn't merely something Lark aspired to, it was a necessity. Aside from her clothes, crystal collection, and art supplies, she didn't accumulate much in the way of stuff. Too many possessions had made it harder to move, and she didn't have space to store things anyway. Her apartment at the colony was tiny and bare bones, a junior one-bedroom furnished with the basics. Minnie offered just enough space to sleep and work, especially after Lark packed the inventory she sold at festivals. Lark's existence seemed chaotic to most people, especially her sisters, Wren and Raven, who had serious jobs that kept them tied to one place. But Lark's nomadic lifestyle was liberating. She didn't bow to corporate masters who set random productivity goals and expected 50 to 60-hour work weeks. Lark's life was hers to schedule. She chose which universities or art leagues to teach at, which festivals to visit, and what art she wanted to make. And because she was single, Lark never worried about being on the road too long. No one special was waiting for her back at the colony, a situation that Wren and Raven deemed wholly unacceptable. To set things right, they constantly fixed Lark up with men they met, refusing to believe that she didn't want a boyfriend. She went on dates, but a relationship was the last thing Lark wanted. She'd been there, done that, and seen the error of her ways. Remaining single was the only way to ensure the past never repeated itself. So each night, Lark went to bed alone, content in the knowledge that she was free to live the life she chose on her own terms. And that she'd broken the cycle. She'd never hurt anyone the way her mother had hurt her family. The caller ID flashed across Lark's screen. Wren was calling. If Lark didn't take it, her sister would worry she was stuck on the side of the road somewhere. "Hey, Kelsey, my sister's calling. I'd better go." "Is this the one marrying the famous chef, or the one dating the super rich guy?" Lark rolled her eyes. People were always so impressed by fame, money, and status. It was so silly. Those were the least impressive things about the men dating her sisters. The soul was what mattered. As far as Lark could tell, both Wren and Raven had found good men. "The bride," Lark answered. "Cool. Have a great time at the wedding. I'll try to have your painting done by the time you get back to Vermont, Kelsey said. Okay, but don't rush. I expect a masterpiece, Lark joked. Kelsey laughed. No pressure there. Bye, Lark said, then switched the calls. Hi, Ren. What took you so long to answer? I was starting to worry you were stuck in a ditch. Of course, she was, because Ren, the oldest Donovan sister, was a perpetual worrier. Well, I'm not. Minnie gets me where I need to go. Not always, Ren said under her breath, but loud enough for Lark to hear. Shh, don't jinx her. Lark gave the dashboard a reassuring pat. Minnie might be old, but she always came through. Yes, it was true that Lark had called her sisters a few times when she was stranded and couldn't afford the repairs Minnie needed. But with Ren and Raven's help, Minnie got patched up and was back on the road. And Lark always paid her sisters back. Where are you? Ren asked. I am close. Behind the dash, a disturbing clang ricocheted. It was loud and sounded dangerous and expensive. Holy crap, Lark sucked in a breath. How close? Brent asked. The lights on the console flickered. Real close. Lark stared at the instruments, hoping her eyes were playing tricks. Nope. The clock, brake lights, and turn signal indicators flashed like a crosswalk sign. Like where? Have you made it to the ferry yet? Ren pressed. All at once, the gauge indicators went flat, the air conditioning cut off, and the hum of the engine sputtered like a dying rattlesnake. Lark's heart jolted into overdrive. I'll call you back. Everything okay? Ren asked, apprehension heavy in her voice. Lark hated lying, but she wouldn't give Ren the satisfaction of knowing something was wrong with Minnie, not after she'd busted on Lark's beloved RV. All power died as Lark coasted the RV to the side of the road. Yeah, it's fine. Just some traffic I've got to navigate. Her pulse thrummed in her ears. Okay, but don't forget to call as soon as you get here. It's important. Right, sure. Lark hung up. A headache began to form behind her eye. Lark shifted the gear into park and then closed her eyes and breathed deep, centering herself. Almost immediately, the universe's healing energy enveloped her like a blanket. Her pulse slowed and her shoulders slid back down on her neck. The headache evaporated as quickly as it had appeared. When her mind was quiet and focused, Lark thought through Minnie's potential problems. The battery was only a year old, and the fuses had just been replaced. The engine could have blown, but there was only one way to know for sure. Lark whispered a prayer of positive intention and turned the key in the ignition. It responded with a click, click, click. Damn. She grabbed her cell, climbed out of the cab, then went to the front of the RV and popped open the hood. Nothing looked obviously wrong with the engine. Minnie might need as little as a simple fix or a complete overhaul. A police car whizzed past. Lark froze. Then she left. She was being ridiculous. The chances that Heron Harbor's chief of police was on patrol and happened to drive past at this exact moment were practically zero. Hector would surely be downtown at the police station, doing whatever chiefs of police did. One of his trusty patrol officers had to be driving that squad car, and they didn't know her from Eve. Lark opened her cell and searched for a mechanic with expertise in large vehicles. The cop car's lights and siren flipped on, and the car made a U-turn. Crap. Lark's stomach crumpled like a discarded can of kombucha as the vehicle headed straight for her, then pulled up behind Minnie. Turning away from the open hood, Lark tilted her gaze up to the bright blue sky dotted with billowy white clouds. She whispered, "Please, universe, don't let it be him. I'm not ready. Give me a few more days." Footsteps crunched against sand and gravel as the officer approached the front of her RV. Lark's heart pounded with a mixture of dread and morbid anticipation. She should turn around, but she couldn't bear to look. The deep sound of a throat clearing pierced the silence. "Looks like you need some assistance." The familiar tone was like a knife through her heart. She spun on the heels of her boots to face the officer. It was him, all right. Her secret ex-fiancé. I hope you enjoyed this reading.